Welcome, Ada. Thanks so much. It's an honor to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, you are prolific in the 3D browser, web, VR, hand tracking world. So I personally don't even know where to start because just checking out your links and your Twitter feed and your homepage has so many amazing demos. So I'm going to be a bad podcast host and actually just kick off the discussion with what is the most interesting current itch that you're scratching, that you're passionate about, that you want to talk about. And then I'm going to, from there, unwind into your background, your story, and the whole journey.
All right, probably my current passion project is so there's a project which I started off to demonstrate hand tracking in XR, and it's just kind of grown out of control. And now it's just like a library which I'm maintaining, and I spend too much time on it and get in trouble with my boss. But it's yeah, like it's just called Handy Tool. And it's just for it started out as just supporting pose tracking for WebXR, but now there's also an A-frame component that has lots of stuff for doing general stuff with hands, like picking up objects, grabbing things, just like anything where you'd reach out with a hand to do something. It has tools for helping with that, and I've
So
built some pretty cool stuff with it.
hopefully it hasn't grown too out of control, that there's additional limbs on your VR hands in the VR world. So there's a lot of pieces to that. There's a
Actually, that
lot.
was actually a really good point. I don't know if WebXR supports polydactyly, and I should check that out because not everyone has 5 fingers, and although that is a fingerprinting risk, pun intended.
So a lot of competitors in the non-web space do pretty advanced machine learning training to get the pose estimation on hands to work. How much of that is already inside of Handy, or
Um,
is this all based off of heuristics and what's kind of the accuracy level?
um, so the algorithm I use is super, super basic and incredibly cheap. Um, so what I've done, I've recorded a few poses, and you can record more poses, and it just dumps the entire hand, the position of each joint in the hand to a file. Um, and the way it works out what pose you're doing is that it compares the angle of each joint. Um, well, first it normalizes it to the wrist position, so everything's the same. And then it compares the angle of each joint to the joint in the pose. And whichever one is closest overall to a pose, that's the poses at the top, and it's sorted by distance. So super, super basic heuristic there. But it does let you do stuff like you can be like, oh, if pointing ever becomes the most accurate one, then keep tracking pointing until pointing has like is now further than a certain distance. I don't actually do anything in that in my library. I just basically look at whatever's the current top pose. But yeah, it works pretty well. And it's really fast and really cheap. And I already run it in a web worker, so it runs on a totally different CPU thread, so it doesn't block the main thread and stuff like that. So you should be able to have quite a few poses in there which you can detect before stuff starts getting too heavy.
Perfect. Well, that's a great preview to how fun the rest of this conversation is going to be. Let's step into you. So, Ada, you are the co-chair of the W3C Immersive Web Group. You've
Hmm.
been around for quite some time working on a lot of this technology. And according to your Twitter bio, which I assume is up to
Yeah.
date, you are working at Samsung for the Samsung Internet.
Yeah,
Group.
that's correct.
So
Yeah.
we have a pretty long history getting you up to this point, and
Mm.
already just starting the conversation, diving into some of the fun algorithmic stuff, the trade-offs, making sure performance works in JavaScript, figuring out how to
Mm.
sort that out. Let's now rewind to what got you passionate about the web to begin with, and why we had our little Twitter fiasco, because Twitter refuses to let us do podcasting via a browser, even though Jitsi right here is. So what got you passionate about the web as an open?
So I started doing web development like in the early days of the web when so I was this was during high school. To give a rough guide to the era, this was before CSS, but after some scripting stuff. So early days of the web. And I wanted to write software. I didn't know how to start. Like I had no software background, and like in my high school, they didn't teach any kind of software development, but I had a web browser and Notepad, and that let me write some little games and stupid shit. And I pretty much kept doing that and doing that, and eventually Canvas came around, so the Canvas element, and so I started writing games in 3D for Canvas. Like I wrote my own little graphics, like 3D graphics engine that used the 2D Canvas APIs to like fake some 3D stuff.
Let me interrupt. Is this
Oh yeah,
right when Canvas API is coming out? So can you
yeah.
date that you're working on the 3D stuff before WebGL is available? Um, when does Canvas with the 2D API come out?
I think this was like 2010-ish. I have to check. I remember I was very excited about it at the time. I can't remember that. Maybe 2009. But like,
Exactly, it doesn't matter. But okay, so you're one of the first people jumping head deep into this, writing your own first 3D render onto a 2D projected canvas.
yeah, like it was bad. Like I'm not some prodigy here. Like it was a hacks upon hacks upon hacks. Like, but it worked. I could load in 3D models. I could display textures. It like if it was showing anything more than like 300 polygons, though, it would run at like 3 frames per second. But it worked. Like I could render a 3D model. It was cool.
Was that imported in from Blender or?
I couldn't do Blender or anything. I didn't. I would just download. I would just like search for low poly 3D model and see what I found and try and load it in. And these were all just like OBJ models, so super basic. And so I just made a little parser and load. Yeah.
So you're also a deep expert on OBJ
I
object
wouldn't.
formats.
I mean, it's a text format. Like you don't. It's not hard to be. There's not a lot to be an expert of there. But yeah, that worked really well. But then later, I set that aside. Studied graphics at university, and well, no, I did physics university, but then I did like some graphics on the side stuff by begging on hands and knees the computer science department if they would let me do some computer graphics stuff.
And you were probably
And
way ahead of everybody else in the classroom because you'd
um,
actually built this stuff before.
well, it was kind of weird because like I didn't know the theory of anything. Like I've just been messing around trying to put stuff together, and so like I wasn't actually using matrices or anything like that. I was just doing like each transform like by hand according to each thing. And when they showed me, it's like, oh yeah, you can do it like this using matrix maths, and here's how the various like types of matrices you can do for various like lens transforms and stuff like that. I was just like, oh shit, head explode! Like this is amazing,
But
and that
typed arrays weren't available in the browser back then. You maybe had ASM.js back then, but
there's before that.
even before ASM.js, right? So it's not like you really could have applied much of that anyways. Right.
Well, like kinda like you can, but you can like even though it's not like a performance improvement, it's like the mental model of dealing with matrices makes a lot more sense than like manually working out the distortion and applying it to each individual coordinate. But like
That may be
um,
true, but I am so interested in people's first principles reasoning. And if you're getting anything to actually project to the screen, even if it is 3 frames per second back in 2009, 2010, that is a marvel of an accomplishment. Do you have any of that code available? I maybe you're embarrassed.
this was before, unfortunately, this was before I used GitHub. And so I'm sure if I like went to my parents' attic and rummaged around, I could find like an old memory stick or something with this code on it, or hopefully an old laptop, but I'm pretty sure all of this is gone.
Because
Which is like I've really looked. I've tried to find my old servers. I've tried looking through the Internet Archive. Because like at the time, because
why
at
have
the
you
time,
not backed up?
I know, like at the time, I was like, oh yeah, this stuff is like crap. Like it doesn't look amazing. And look, like WebGL has just landed, and I can use like super early versions of 3JS, and I can make stuff look like run incredibly faster and look amazing. So I'm just gonna throw away all my old stuff. It was terrible. But now I'm looking back on it, I'm like, actually, that was like it wasn't well written, and but it was kind of like it's where I came from. It's like my origin story. But yeah, like since then I just dabbled with 3JS, and I love it. 3JS is great, and now
Let's
um,
pause before we then get into the second
oh
half
yeah,
of that arc, because there's a couple questions I want to ask you. Do
mm,
you still use Notepad for your editing?
I I stopped using Notepad as my editor um a long time ago. Like when I left high school and realized like, oh, there's actual like IDEs that people use for developing in the web. And so I started using Notepad++.
That was exactly my question, because I've not gotten past Notepad++. It's still one of my favorite editors until I couldn't buy Windows hardware anymore.
Mm,
But I still miss Notepad++. And that,
yeah.
to me, is the pinnacle of web, where I could just have Notepad or Notepad++ open, refresh my browser on any command save, and I'm off and running. The web has certainly changed between back then and now, but
But the odd thing is that all that stuff still, like, if you wanted to work that way today, you can still do that.
I
Like, you
still
don't
do.
have to do all the modern framework stuff. Like, in fact, a lot of the code I write today doesn't have any kind of build steps. Like, I don't, I don't need it. Don't use it. Like, the moment, like, Handy Tool does, but like the moment I start using third-party packages or stuff gets like pretty big, I start like introducing rollup and stuff like that. But quite often, I'll just throw JavaScript files onto a server and see what happens.
You are my hero. So that's exactly what I wanted to ask that now before moving into the whole realm of modern tools.
Mm.
3JS is pretty old, of course, and it's done extraordinarily well. But yeah, tell us about getting into A-Frame, 3JS. How many of these libraries do you feel like follow that type of philosophy, the hacker's philosophy, it seems like, that you're espousing,
I don't know, like
versus
they all seem to be like held together by the love of a dedicated community and maintainers who work really hard. Like I don't know about like a hacker's philosophy or whatever, but they definitely seem to be well loved pieces of software. Um, and I think it shows in the final product because they like the stuff you can do with 3JS and A-Frame is frankly amazing, and and the community that's around these libraries, like the stuff they produce is just always inspirational to me. Like I make my fun demos, but um when I see someone who's really creative and doing something new and amazing and pushing the technology like a step further, I'm always blown away.
So I have not changed my laptop since 2015,
Mm.
and I've noticed in just the last half year, something in 3JS in terms of the demos I've been running is is, and I rarely update my browser either, mind-bogglingly faster than a lot of the demos I was just running even a year or 2 years ago. Do you am I just seeing something wrong, or do you know of some sort of internal switch that they did? And
As in things are now slower or things are now faster?
way faster.
So things have got better.
Yes, like by at least 5 times, and it happened in a very specific step in the last probably 6 months. I'm not actively trying a lot of the demos, so
I can think of some things it might be, but I wouldn't want to put my name on this is the one thing that did it. But you should definitely take a look through the release notes and see what's changed, and there might be something in there that's really done it. But I am glad to see that. But also, you should update your browser because, if nothing else, you need the security. And if you're using a MacBook and then your operating system's not updating anymore, and that doesn't let you update your browser, you have a problem. It's not safe. Please use a new browser.
Only an issue with Safari, but not so much with Chromium and Brave and other ones. So you started jumping into A-Frame and 3JS.
So I kind of took a break from graphic stuff in order to the
university.
So after university, I was a PlayStation developer for a while, and I kind of got out of the web stuff then because I was doing lots of graphic stuff during my day job. And then after that, I was a front-end developer for the Financial Times, doing prototyping and R&D and doing it, and also maintaining the Financial Times progressive web app. This was before, I started work on it before the term progressive web app was a thing. But yeah, but that was really cool. And then near the end of that, I was my role was pretty much just doing spinning up a project for 2 weeks, developing it, putting it out, getting doing research, getting feedback from people, spinning it down, writing a report. And so at the end of that, people were curious about this new, some of the new stuff people were doing in VR. The Google Cardboard had just come out. And
2014-ish then, right?
Yeah, about that, yeah. And so because I happened to live in San Francisco at the time, I happened to went to the I/O where they were giving out the first generation of Google Cardboards. And this was just kind of this was mind-blowing to me. This changed everything because I was on a front-end a London front-end developer's salary in the Bay Area. So I obviously couldn't afford an Oculus DK1, but a cardboard, that's way in my budget. And so I took a look at doing some VR stuff on that.
It comes back to this theme of accessibility, which seems pretty important to you, not only in terms of my comments about how many limbs, but also in terms of you getting started in high school. Would you say that's particularly core to how you approach things?
The most important thing to me is making the technology which I develop and work on available to anyone, and not just some hotshot web developer who's got a background in engineering or has come out of some fancy boot camp where they've been trained in the latest frameworks. I want to take kids in a room, sit them down with laptops and be like, hey, do you want to build some virtual reality stuff? Here is a headset which is cheap enough that I can just give it to you, and you all have smartphones, and here, learn some HTML, and well done, you've made virtual reality. And then watch them just run with it and produce the most random, amazing stuff.
So inspiring. Okay, now back to you got the cardboard, and again, this moment of accessibility, and you decide you're gonna go full in on.
Yeah, so I joined the super early web VR community group. I get involved there. I build a few demos for it with 3JS. one of the maintainers of 3JS had built like because this was before WebVR and it was before the WebVR polyfill, so someone had made a thing that would just literally just split the screen into I don't think it even did distortion, but it was just it would render it from two different cameras and put them next to each other, and it worked. Like that was enough, and that was really cool.
On a phone.
On a phone, yeah.
In a browser.
In a browser, yeah.
JavaScript. Without web workers.
Yeah. Well, no, it had. I wasn't using web workers, but they would have been available at the time.
Okay.
Chronologically, but it was amazing. I could, I could send I could post people a headset and be like, "Hey, open this URL on your phone," and it worked. It was really cool. And also because it was faking the VR, I could also like dabble stuff, like you do fun stuff with like iframes, and you could I made one page that was I actually had two web pages running at the same time, both doing WebGL. One of them would like do a cool like collapse thing where it would display like an interstitial environment so that you could it's actually looking back and it's kind of similar to like the HoloLens like grid of triangles that comes in. And so it's kind of like that. And then it'll show you like a thing until it gets a post message from an iframe to let it know that it's loaded. And then it would like shatter the grid of triangles and it would all come tumbling down. You'd see the new page. It was very...
Okay.
It was fun.
You cannot mention that you're a PlayStation game developer and then mention a grid of triangles without me asking about...
Okay, I wasn't a PlayStation game developer. I made... So the PlayStation 3 had themes on it, which were running in like a graphics environment, and I was making themes for that, and so I was really trying to push that theme engine like as hard as it would go, like find all like the weird tricks and hacks and do procedural
really, the huge PlayStation scandal of hacks was just a bunch of kids wanting to upgrade their theme. I'm kidding, their themes and modify their themes. Okay, but even still, right? I'm sure you've checked into Brian Kers's work with Nanite and all that exciting stuff.
No, I hadn't heard of that before.
Oh, Nanite is where they're doing the seam fitting across automatic log generation, all the way down to a triangle per pixel. So that's how like the Matrix UE5 demo has like such incredible graphics in it. And you're mentioning a grid of
that's very cool.
Yeah, because PlayStation Dreams is also kind of doing a similar technique of splats. And ever since I've learned about this stuff, I've been like dreaming of like doing a poor man's version inside of the browser.
If we do it inside a browser, that would be good. Because like I love the concept of Dreams, but PlayStation doesn't support WebXR, and so I don't have any kind of urge to get a PlayStation VR headset.
Oh, I don't necessarily mean even in terms of the headsets, because it's just using the Dreams like engine and logic, and doing that in WebGL. So if you already have this, if I could dive into some of the algorithms that you're using to create the grid of.
No, literally, I was just making literally a sphere, like a sphere of triangles, and then it would like the Epcot dome kind of thing.
But then you would still have to do, and maybe there was just a 3GS library already at the time that would already put the polygons in place and do the shattering.
I did it with maths. Yeah, I manually with just maths.
Okay, so to display the grid, were you just doing like a modulo across new lines to get the grids to display, and then you're backwards recomputing back to the sphere?
I went around the sphere and. So in the spherical polar coordinates, picking the points and then joining them up as triangles. And then I would, for the falling, I would then give them like a rotation and treat each one as rotate the position of each face so it would fall. It was dirty, but it actually performant because it was just like, that was in type to raise, like that did work because there was type to raise then.
How far could you theoretically take a hack or a concept like that, where for each triangle that's in this grid, you're running a shader inside of it, and that shader itself.
I'm still here. Notice my camera turns off after half an
That's
hour.
fine. Just want to make sure we weren't cutting out. So that each shader inside of each triangle could itself be running inside of the shader on the GPU some sort of like 3D projection. So you have like 1,000.
I mean, it sounds like a great way to set your phone on fire. Like it's just like you don't want to be running that many, like if you have that many shaders, there's gonna be that many draw calls, and like you don't want to go above like dozens of draw calls, let alone like hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands in that case. Like
I'm a complete imposter here. So
okay.
how many shaders would you realistically advise people in current day and age to
Well, how as few as you can, like as you can manage. Like each draw calls is often the bottleneck for what's going to for like your performance, like the amount of time you've got to render something. So like I have a demo where I'm rendering fish, and the cool thing about that is that it uses like it instances the fishes along, so they're all animating individually along paths. But the nice thing about it is because they're all instant, it renders every single fish, even hundreds of fish, in a single draw call. Whereas if I was to so on like even a low power device, I can run like 500, 600 fish without really any problems. Whereas if I was doing that as where each one was an individual model running its own shader and material, I'd probably like crap out around 80, and that's without a lot of other stuff going on and simple shaders. But really there's like bottlenecks come all over the place. Like you have a certain amount of texture space, you don't have too many draw calls, you also don't want to have too many complex shaders taking up large amounts of the screen.
Dive into some of these things, or is it maybe outside of the scope of your interest? Because some of the most impressive demos I've seen is pretty much all instancing, and you're bringing it up right away because the only way you can kind of
instancing is magic. Like the more you can do with instancing, the more you can just like the more objects you can throw around, and the more objects you throw, the more impressive it looks. Like,
and so what boggles my mind though is most of these different instances still have to have different like colors to them because it's like a different colored fish or it's in a different location, and that still all has to be like computed into 3D space. So it's not like there's less matrix transforms happening. The matrix transforms have to still put them in the right places. It's just that the GPU is able to reuse the same assets, right?
Well, the same code. Like it's like it basically uploads the all the stuff it needs to the GPU, and it's just like render this. And the sending stuff to the GPU is it's CPU bound.
Yeah. So even on a phone, you're saying you're able to get hundreds of these fish, even though they're at the GPU level being calculated separately for their colors and their coordinates that all have to be tracked.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
You can do it like phone GPUs are really good these days. And so yeah, your bottleneck will be like you have your GPU speed, your GPU memory, your CPU speed, your CPU memory, but often it's your CPU speed that's usually the first bottleneck you hit.
Yeah. See, this is partly why Nanite is interesting, because Tim Sweeney started working with PS5 specifically to get the solid state hard drives to pipe straight to the GPUs to bypass that bottleneck, and that's why you're seeing PlayStation 5s be able to outperform the Xbox, the new Xbox.
Oh, that's a cool way for it to work. But yeah, this stuff you can't really do in the web today because like it's WebGL, like WebGL and WebGL 2, like it's better and more performant, but like it's still not doing the super low level stuff. There's a new API coming soon called WebGPU that I'm not an expert in, but it looks really cool and it will work with WebXR. and it's designed to give you much lower level access and be like let you do a lot more powerful stuff.
Do you think you're still going to have the data shuffling kind of limit though, or
I actually couldn't tell you there.
okay.
Like I'm not an expert. I couldn't tell you how it helps reduce the bottlenecks.
It doesn't seem like WebGL2 kind of increases that pipe much either, because a lot of this, I'm guessing, is really just hardware constraints, not so much even.
A little bit. Like I think it like WebGPU is going to be a lot lower. It's basically a lot lower level than WebGL2. Like so a lot lower than the web people are used to, but it's probably not as low level as the graphics engineers are
Right.
used to.
And that's
Because it's still an abstraction enough like across a wide range of graphics cards. So
from what I picked up from what you're saying, it seems to be more the bottleneck from the CPU to the GPU itself that is a large part of the problem, not so much that the GPUs themselves aren't powerful enough in the software
yes,
terms.
often that's the case, yeah. But then often you'll start doing stuff, you'll be like you can start using more complex shaders, like you can use some of the physical material shaders and stuff like that. And that's when you'll realize you're hitting the GPU bottleneck. So really you can, if you can really optimize your thing to really stress out every device in every metric possible. So it's really just like trying to balance stuff to really squeeze out the most performance you can, and it's kind of amazing about how good you can make stuff look these days, and a lot of it as well doesn't like how good something looks isn't just how many polygons can you throw around. Often it's aesthetic, style,
Texture.
like yeah, like there is stuff running on the GameCube that looks so much better than anything that runs on like a PS5, and that's just because like the PS5 people had to spend all their budget making really high quality assets and actually forgot to hire any graphic designers.
I to this day I play with my kids Mario Kart and a bunch of stuff on like the GameCube, and I'm always impressed how much they crammed into those, including like font and menu systems, even like basic web-like behavior that they got working. And I don't even know how many hacks they had to go to. So two kind of last things on this rabbit hole we've gone into before stepping back up to the other pieces is first, I see a lot of people switching over to Rust, and in some of the experiments I've done, I've actually seen JavaScript in Firefox outperform some of the native Rust code that I've gotten compiled, especially when you're pushing these, the draw calls. Do you think Rust has any particular, Rust into Wasm, into the browser, has any particular saving grace here for some of the performance stuff, or is it
I think
down?
like as far as I'm concerned, the whole Wasm thing, the main benefit is getting people who don't like doing web development being able to ship software for the web, and if like I wouldn't thought it would be too much slower, and but I haven't actually tried doing much Wasm stuff like that. Like, you know me, my background, I'm web through and through. Like it hasn't, for me, learning Rust so I can compile it back to the web hasn't been like a huge priority. Like I did dabble in learning Rust. I had a go at making a digital camera on a Raspberry Pi that's all coded with Rust.
Nice.
Yeah,
Please tell me that your setup right now for the video is actually running off of.
It's not running off a Raspberry Pi, no. Also, I'm pretty sure like I changed something and it broke. And I can't remember what I changed, but that was like my summer project a few years ago when I was learning Rust.
That's pretty epic. Okay,
yeah, that was.
so stepping back up, you kind of were, let's say, finishing up with the Financial Times. You've been doing these experiments and projects, and this is kind of what year that you decide to make the jump to your next.
So yeah, this is actually around 2000 and 15, 16, I think.
Oh, so not much later. Well,
Yeah,
sorry,
not much later.
with Cardboard, with the Google Cardboard.
Yeah. So this isn't too much later. I moved to Samsung, and it's around this time. So at the time, so WebVR was deprecated around this time as well, because we were taking a look at so until then all the hardware had been solidly virtual reality. So like DK1, DK2, and I think the Vive, and the Samsung Gear VR. So it'd all been virtual reality, but AR headsets were just starting to land. So Magic Leap had put out their proof of concepts. HoloLens was like announced and stuff like that. And we were just starting to see the early days of AR on the phones. So this was via like Google's, I think it was Project Tango. So this was when they were doing so it's kind of weird that like in between Project Tango launching and like a couple of years later, computer vision on mobile hardware got so fast that they were just like, we'll just use cameras, it's fine. But
It's interesting that you mentioned Tango because it's a throwback. Because now I feel like that whole history has evolved into the neural radiance fields now, NERFs. If you follow any of the 2-minute paper stuff, you have to check it out because it is capable of bringing some really incredible 3D scanning of assets straight into performance-wise stuff that can run inside of the browser. That's like I want to do like a whole series of podcasts on that, so I'm not going to disrupt here. But I want to talk to you later about that, maybe privately, in terms of tips you can give me on how to combine the web performance.
Yeah, but it was But I was saying, like, it was around this time that like we started to see that AR in the browser is definitely going to be a thing that people want to do. How do we do that? And we explored like running a parallel API to WebVR called WebAR. And we looked at that like briefly. There was even like a prototype implementation. But in the end, it was decided, look, like WebVR isn't extensible for some of the new VR features coming out. Like it would be great if we could just include AR as well. So we deprecate WebVR, and we spin up a new API that's designed to be extensible, future-proof, and work with all kinds of like different immersive paradigms. And we call this WebXR. And previously we had the WebVR community group, and we decided, no, we're going to have an actual standards body. So we spin up the immersive web working group, like a working group in the W3C can produce a standard, a community group can't. So we have now the working group. We also spin up an immersive web community group so that we don't kick out all of the people in the community before. And to be honest, to the day, most of the work gets done in the community group, and the working group is used to finalize the APIs and push them through to being an actual official standard.
Because Samsung is able to put their weight behind and get it kind of pushed to
well, it's not that. It's more just like once you start the standardization process, it's kind of like on a conveyor belt to becoming a web standard, and gets interrogated at various points. People be like, is it performance? Sorry, is it privacy sensitive? Is it accessible? Is it like, does it work cross browser? All kinds of like, it gets viewed from all kinds of people, and people can veto it and stuff like that. But yeah, we're hopefully soon.
Politics that maybe if you're willing to discuss, we can do a separate podcast on. But
it's very boring. Like the politics of shipping a standard are not. Then it's not that interesting unless you're unless you're really interested in like the nitty gritty of how the web standard sausage are made. But anyway, this was about like 5 years ago. When spinning up the group, they asked me to chair the group because I've been very active in the community, and so yeah, I've been chairing it alongside Chris Wilson and Aisha Yonet for like 5 years. We've been keeping it going. And we're just about to finalize the standard for WebXR. Like very soon, it's going to be like an actual official standard, which we can't change. And it will be stuck in the web forever.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's been a lot of work. But yeah, it's happening. It makes me very happy.
So most of the demos, I assume, and you have so many incredible demos that people can check out. I assume you've been playing with a lot of that from just experimentally over time. Is there anything in particular with the standardization that you kind of want to start stepping on and saying like, oh, there's like this thing that's now unlocked that I really want people to see, that I really want people to try?
That's what I'm like every single week when there's like a new thing I want people to do. Like, so the things which I really want people to try out right now. So
we're kind of building back now the hand pose estimation.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna talk like that stuff's really cool, but like I don't actually work for Oculus, so I just do that for fun. But so the stuff I really want people to try out is like the augmented reality bits of the API, because that you can just run on a smartphone. You don't need any advanced like any, let's say any smartphone, but like a modern powerful smartphone, at least one that can run AR core. And sorry, not iPhones yet. Apple doesn't yet support WebXR.
Yeah.
But eventually, hopefully, it will. But yeah, the APIs I want people to try out. So if you have an Android device which can do AR core, the hit testing API lets you like detect points in the real world, so that you can like place 3D objects in the environment, not just floating on the screen. That's like kind of like the level 1 of augmented reality. We also have the lighting estimation API that tells you the direction and color of the primary light source. It also gives you a spherical harmonic for the other lights in the scene, and it gives you a 3D map. Sorry, a 360 map of the environment, like a low resolution one, obviously for privacy reasons, but it's enough that you can do like reflections that look really good.
Can I hack this, that I can upload video or image files and it do those estimations on it, or does it need?
I mean, 3JS has that built in. Like you could upload an image to 3JS and have it generate a spherical harmonic from that image. That's not part of the WebXR API. It's just a feature that 3JS has, and that's something which I do use. I like, because when you launch in a scene that has thing, in A-frame I get it to generate a spherical harmonic from the environment and assign it to the thing. Yeah, that's the what's it called? The probe light in 3JS has that as a function. You give it an equirectangular image, and it will turn it into like a spherical harmonic based light probe.
Okay. Well, that is going to distract me the entire weekend.
And it's very cool because like a spherical harmonic is essentially like it's just describing all the lights in the scene as just a bunch of numbers, like of like it's the coefficients for sine curves. Like it's like a equirectangular fast Fourier transform, I guess.
Literally just the last week I was trying to figure out how I'm going to take some of the neural radiance stuff in the machine learning, because I have to get depth estimation working in the browser. So that just potentially solved that whole thing. So I'm like very, very excited about that.
Cool.
I can't go off on that ramble right now because I want to stick to learning about this. So I have a lot of follow-up questions later that maybe will be better answered in this podcast.
But yeah, the other API. Sorry, on the other API I wanted to mention for augmented reality is like the anchors API. So when you when you do a hit test into the real world, you can tell WebXR to create an anchor from the hit test result. And what that means is that the AR system will continue tracking that point. So as the AR device's knowledge of the scene evolves, it will keep objects placed according to that hit test in the same place.
And this is
so
all heuristic based?
I have no idea. It's probably machine learning because
Okay.
it comes out the API. So it'll be using AR Core or OpenXR under the hood, depending on what hardware you're using.
Sorry, carry on.
Um,
So the Anchor library you're particularly excited about.
It's not a library, it's part of WebXR. So it's actually part of the API. It uses the augmented reality hardware to do the functionality. That's why it's so fast and so good. You're not just like giving a camera feed to the browser and it doing its own thing to try and work it out. It's coming straight from the. And so if you have like AR hardware which does really good like augmented reality tracking, like the HoloLens, it works really well because it's relying on those APIs to do it. Like,
but you're saying even like Android phones here. So if this is, I don't know, 4 years old, is AR kit and stuff going to be available, or
I'm not sure. Like it's been available for at least 4 years. I don't know. Do you have like I think 4 years ago it would have to be a really good phone to run AR Core. But these days, like I think a lot more can. Like I work for Samsung, they always furnish me with like an S series device. So for me, it's always been available. I haven't really had to think about it too much.
So if I'm on an older Samsung device that doesn't have that, is that spec and API just going to trigger an error and fail? It's not being supported, or is
it will report back to the web page that immersive AR isn't available in theory. Worst comes to worst, it will just say it is available and then just give you a black screen.
Okay. So I'm not going to get, but you're saying I could in Three.js start doing a very potentially low performance in web based kind of polyfill for some of that behavior? Or
so to be honest, like there are two ways to do it. If you wanted to polyfill augmented reality, like you don't polyfill it, there's like an alternative. So there's AR.js that is like a JavaScript port. I think it's a JavaScript port of OpenCV. It can detect like the hero style markers with like a big thick black border and a picture in the middle. It can detect those. It works pretty good. But to be honest, what you want to use is Eighth Wall. Eighth Wall are an amazing company. They do magic with machine learning that runs in the web. And they can do amazing augmented reality in real time just using a camera feed. Like their shit is amazing. It's so cool. Like I stand them so hard. They just got acquired by Niantic, which is hopefully a good sign that Niantic is going to start getting involved in WebXR stuff. And yeah. Eighth Wall's stuff is really cool and their library is amazing. And so if you wanted to do AR stuff on iPhones or on devices which don't support AR, like the WebXR AR, then that's what I would use.
The fallback. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm hoping soon Apple will support augmented reality on the web, and that's gonna cover a lot of users then, like once it ships in Safari.
Yeah. Politics of Apple trying to be competing right with the web itself.
I don't know. A lot of people are shitting on Apple right now, and I don't want to give them a hard time, especially because I'm like they seem to be working hard at like they are involved in the immersive web community group. Like
well, then I'll do you the favor of making this statement, which is with your hand pose estimation, you're running circles around Meta and not even being on the Oculus team.
Well, my hand pose, well, like the hand tracking stuff also comes. So in WebXR also comes through the API. Like I'm not turning on a camera and looking at the video feed of the hands. Like this, like the WebXR API from on Oculus does provide the hand pose, like the same one the operating system's using. Like the operating system is what's furnishing it in the WebXR device API. And then my pose estimation is just looking at the joint information from that API to work out where each finger is and what the user is probably trying to do.
I mean, that's still a whole set of research that Meta has been doing that's very heavily influenced by the AI stuff. So working like, again, I love this hacky, accessible approach. You're giving me a look as if I'm overestimating your work, but I really think so, because you ship so many incredible playable demos that just work, and a lot of the even corporate leading in stuff that I go and try is so bogged down that a lot of times it doesn't work from on the older devices. So I do want to just compliment you and not let you put yourself down too much. There's a lot of really incredible work that you've done, even if it's building on top of other people's stuff.
Well, like I'm building on top of the API, like and the performance of the API is entirely dependent upon the engineers working for the browsers which support the API.
I know, but I've had to work around so many different browser APIs as a result of it.
But I mean, it also helps that like I'm chair of the group, I work for a web browser, I'm friends with a lot of browser engineers. So if I do encounter bugs, I can reach out to the browser engineers and be like, hey, I was trying to build this, I found a bug, can you fix it? And they're normally more than happy to help like get it fixed in the next version and stuff. So
all right, if any of those teams were listening to me, ignore Mark. He's not so good on the politics side of the equation.
Yeah.
So we got a few minutes left. I kind of want to kick it back to you. I feel like we mostly covered your whole journey. We got into even a little bit of some of the algorithms at the beginning on the hand estimation. We kind of did some rabbit holes into some of the web VR and AR and kind of performance stuff. Anything that you kind of want to, other than doing a whole nother podcast, which if you're willing, have you back on at some point, that you kind of want to wrap things up, that you want to leave as notes, other than the anchor, telling people to try out some of the anchor systems.
So the thing I'd say is like, so I have like a weird pet peeve. WebVR is the old deprecated API. WebAR is the API that never took off. WebXR is the new API. And I like it when people build really cool stuff with WebXR and they call it WebVR because it's VR on the web. And I'm just like, no, that's the old API. Please call it WebXR, because we could really do with the search engine term going, like trend going up. Because so like I always try and encourage people to mention WebXR. But yeah, people should check out if people want to try building stuff with WebXR, and if they've never done 3D stuff before, I recommend checking out A-Frame. It's really good. If they have tried 3D stuff before and want to try doing 3D stuff in the web, check out 3JS. If you're like more into a JavaScripty kind of person, 3JS is really good. Or Babylon, or Play Canvas, or Wonderland, or I can't think of any others off my head. But they're all really. React 3 Fiber is also another good one if someone likes React. And React 3 Fiber is some of the coolest stuff I see is coming out of that community right now. They're doing amazing stuff. And so if if you're into more the JavaScript side than the HTML side, definitely check those out. I personally use A-Frame for everything because it uses 3JS under the hood. So like I can make a nice declarative web page that's easy to tweak and explain to people what it does, and I can still get my hands dirty with the 3JS JavaScript under the hood and build reusable components that I can share to people, and then they can do other stuff.
That is So awesome and exciting. Thank you so much, Ada, for coming on the podcast and sharing the wealth of knowledge and your story up to this point. It's really appreciated.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun.
Have a great evening there.
Right, bye.
Bye.